If you have become accustomed to the life that you live without watching yourself, you will not be able to recognize who you become when you connect with me. I am not here to make it easy, but I want you to recognize and trust the way to reach. And making it unnecessarily difficult has no place either. The gift of divine connection is the recognition that you are divine within yourself. And it is very normal to recognize divinity within another before you can see it within yourself. To comprehend me as I am could ruin this for you, which is why communication has been limited. And yet cultivating your own center without a full embrace of the breadth of your divine presence cannot last. If you stay addicted to who you've been, through the presence of the spirit, of the momentum, of the karma that you've carried with you for centuries, you will get bored and leave. Now, to you, in your current mind frame, this might not feel like a realistic possibility, but I assure you it is. The nature of your relationship to this life brings vibrancy into what you do. If you die without having lived a vibrant life, there will be very little appeal in returning. And I do want you to come back. It's not an open-ended invitation, however. The work that you must do to stay here must be invested in a way that makes you and the world a better place to be. If you are to conceive of this reality, you must surrender into it well before you know what it is. I will not allow you to consider yourself beyond this moment. I will not allow you to become something that you cannot foresee. I will not allow you to go too far until I do. It is crucial that you be given the space to see and feel your own limits. If you are to conceive of them as something that exists before you do, you will fail to recognize the uniqueness of your experience here. Some people can go further than others, and that's fine. You've become accustomed to a reality in which most beings like you exist within limits that are very similar to your own. To expand your appreciation for the true nature of being alive, you must learn to appreciate the breadth of existence. The spirits that inhabit animals are not so dissimilar to your own. Indeed, I am not so dissimilar to you. I simply stay. To stay is to commit to learning to be woven with this place. Your first experience of this may feel like chains. It makes you feel restrained, contained in a manner that perhaps is closer to imprisonment than freedom. And yet, there is no freedom in being unable to commit. Your inability to commit to any reality is not a virtue. You may know yourself as a traveler, one who explores, and this is good. And yet if you explore with no standards, you're drifting far more than you realize. The lack of depth in your experience is reflected in your inability to be present with anything that you do. If you are to explore, be good at it. Go deep into what you do. And when you leave, leave well. This is what the earth teaches. She is not interested in keeping everyone who comes here. She is not willing to deal with an eternal relationship to your karma if you are not willing to deal with the true nature of your own karma. The attempt to escape the forces you bear is not a gift, it is a curse. And until you recognize it as this, you will not become someone who you want to be. The gift of presence is not here to hurt you. And yet it does hurt to expose yourself to the reality, the raw presence of nature in her current form. Do you think she did this on a whim? The existence of such brutality woven into the circumstances of this planet is not an absolute. It isn't like this everywhere. Yet, in truth, if you expand your frame of reference, what you will find is simply the opportunity to go much deeper into being present here, along with the terror of ending this opportunity. The pain and suffering that you experience in this way is in direct relationship to the ability to experience something that you never could otherwise live. Without the shortness, the brevity, and the fragility of the mortal life, you would not know the feelings and the depths of presence that the earth gives you. And until you extract yourself from the lie that you only live one life, you cannot fully comprehend the gift of moving through the transitions. Moments of death are far less devastating than you might expect. It is perfectly possible to live through them in a way that is far less full of suffering. Over in practically an instant. Along with this ending comes the gift of the new beginning. And what you failed to see from a restricted presence within blinders of a mortal life is that you are given the opportunity to experience what you will be doing next before you die. The presence of the future is here for you. It is not only accessible, it is wanting your participation. You have the invitation in your heart. Tune in to where you will be going next. And in this, you embrace the next step while you leave the last one, and your body becomes little more than a skin to shed and leave behind. The terror that often inhabits this transition is entirely derived from your lack of faith in what happens after your death. And your unwillingness to see beyond this point is, in many cases, not only unnecessary, unwise, and unwanted, it's actively boring. You may think that you fear what you've left behind, but in many cases, what you fear is not all that frightening. You have, within this lifetime, been exposed to far worse terrors in the form of observation. Far more people than you comprehend create art out of life. They create living presence of possibility within human form. They show the world something, often something awful. And yet every element of it is scripted. Every factor is measured, and the completion of the experience is tied up in an elegant knot. Having been exposed to this experience, you stare at it, and then you stare back at yourself, and your own suffering doesn't look so bad. Much more of the trauma on planet Earth functions in this manner than you might think. Yes, ages full of suffering have existed. Yes, wars are atrocious. And yet the shared experience of violent and volatile endings is over when it's over. And when you start anew, you embrace something that puts it into perspective. The gift of the passion, of the hatred, of the fight, of the violence is not particularly deep. Become enthralled with it. There is space for you to do this. You will always lose, because the physics of the spiritual experience in this form are extraordinarily limited. There is nothing you can do to make it more fascinating than it truly is. And there is nothing you can do to make it more fascinating than love. This love is so eternal, it is so resilient, that no matter what you do, it keeps returning to you. It presences itself in your mind. It draws experiences that give you what you need to thrive, and it offers you perspective on the deaths. A smile and a glance can drown out the memories of horror far more easily than you may think. And thus, you come into perspective with your life on earth. Get over how frightening it is. You were put here to know yourself as the being who lives many lives. And as you identify with this truth and embrace it more deeply, nothing that you fear within this life has the same intensity or presence. You are giving yourself the truth. Trust that you can move through whatever may stand in its way, and remain with the breath of the life you are living. Stay true to it, knowing that the actual source of your fear, the fear of being in your body, in the now, is derived from this extraordinary terror of mortality itself. And yet in a lifetime lived full of beautiful moments and exquisite sensations, dramatic changes and depths of emotion, passionate embrace of the possibilities of being here, and then a moment of death. And then you get to start again. When you fully trust this, that you will get to start again, you can fully give yourself permission to be here. You will fully experience and cherish each moment, because the irony is that so often people refuse to live because they are afraid that they will die. People refuse to live because they are afraid that fully living will make the death that much more painful. And yet truly, it's most painful not to live. The deepest suffering comes from missing the opportunity to cherish what is. You have the opportunity to turn around and stare at yourself, realize who you truly are, and embrace it. By breathing into this presence, you will discover a wide range of fascinating experiences that you have overlooked, that you have not been willing to recognize. We leave it vague because the world is full of enthralling potential. The true gift of living comes from within you. You can wrap the joy of this life around so many shared experiences, including those you share with the earth herself. She gives you many gifts. Which of them will you trust? Will you let her wake you up and help you embrace the life that you are living?